Welcome to the latest episode of Bears Boldly Go, where me and Matt here are having a look at the Kirk era cinematic Star Trek outings. Today, we are up to Star Trek V, A Final Frontier, and boy oh boy, is this a film they did make.
They certainly did make 2 hours of something on celluloid, yes. It's widely regarded as the worst of the Star Trek films.
It
I
is
think.
the worst of the worst of the original series Star Trek films.
Yeah, it is certainly the worst of the original series. I probably would say it is the worst of the lot. I think Insurrection has a shout, but for me, not necessarily in lack of quality, but more the fact that it is just a feature-length episode.
Insurrection is just boring.
Yeah,
that's not something you can accuse this film of being.
Yeah. I mean, this one, so I think for some people, maybe Insurrection is the worst. It isn't for me. I have a slight soft spot for Insurrection. I don't think it's great, but as I say, one day we'll cover that.
And we also live in a world where Star Trek Into Darkness exists. So,
what's that then?
So yeah,
I mean, to be honest, I'd completely forgotten the Kelvin Universe films for a second.
It's been quite a few years since I've seen this film. It probably potentially close to 10.
Yeah, I'd say similar.
And
because again, it's one of the ones that's rarely on TV. Because I mean, as we said in
no
previous,
reason to play it on TV.
Yeah, I mean, you get the Spock trilogy all the time and quite often all three will be shown on either successive weeks or successive days or even on the same day. Especially at this time of year.
If we were to add a second subtitle to this film, you know what it would be? Star Trek V, Final Frontier, a Bill Shatner fever dream.
Yeah, because of course this is whereas the previous two films were directed by Leonard Nimoy. This was directed by Kirk himself, Bill Shatner, and written. Go on.
This is the film after it had been toned down because of complaints from the rest of the cast.
Yeah.
So I wonder what that original script looked like.
Yeah, I mean it is an odd film. A lot of the cinematography choices are very, very Kirk centric. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah.
But when he gets onto the ship for the first time in the film, and they're making their way through, there's a lovely it's nicely done because it's that kind of let's go through this giant set that we've built. Single shot thing where a bit like with Hitchcock and whoever, they hide the cut in a sweep or something like that. But it's so tight on Kirk a lot of the time that you can't help but feel that this is very much a Shatner vanity project in a way.
So worth noting, opens in a very similar way to Mission Impossible 2.
Yes. Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Free climbing a mountain.
Yeah. Of course, Mission Impossible 2, the worst of the Mission Impossible films. So I don't think there's any debate on that.
I still have a soft spot for the camping opening where they're all on shore leave in Yosemite.
I mean, that is lovely. And again, I like harking back to what we've said in previous episodes about the friendship, about the trio of Kirk, Spock, and Bones.
You get some wonderful moments in this film of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got it right there. I think there are actually some wonderful moments and some very interesting ideas in this film. It doesn't all work together as a film, I think.
Originally, Kirk did have Cyborg and Bones,
Mm.
not Cyborg, have
But
Spock and Bones betray him,
mm.
but both Nimoy and uh, Kelly,
DeForest Kelly.
yeah, DeForest Kelly, had objections that neither would ever betray Kirk.
Mm.
So that got written out. But it just leaves this thing that even after Cyborg's Vulcan kind of
Mm.
tricking people into joining him,
Yeah.
he can't break up the triumvirate. Even when he succeeds, like
Yeah.
it works on Bones,
Yeah.
but his affection for Jim is stronger than whatever. Well, not just Jim, his affection for Jim and Spock.
And there's I suppose, a wider scope, his affection for the crew as a whole,
Yeah.
and what they all stand for. I mean, again, we've talked about it before, but like the whole, all 6 films really are talking about how old soldiers become obsolete in a time where war doesn't exist anymore, and so at this point they have, except for maybe Kirk, they've worked through that obsolescence. They've found actually what their true meaning of life is.
It is yet another film with a not fully functioning Enterprise,
Yep.
which has been pretty much every film since Wrath of Khan.
Well, I mean, it was motion picture as well.
Motion picture, at least, was fully crewed.
It was fully crewed, but it was at the point where it had a
Major
a
refit.
full refit, but it hadn't been fully tested because obviously, like those people who died on the transporter pad at the beginning, and so it was.
It's a, you know what this film does very much feel like a Western. There's a
Yeah.
lot of Western elements to this,
Mm.
which I think, again, is Shatner's tastes peeking
But
through.
then, I mean, the term "final frontier" does
Yeah.
really come from westerns and Western culture, I suppose. Really, the myth of the West.
Spock gets some rocket boots,
Yep,
which leads to some fun scenes.
certainly does.
It's just so odd. From the neon lit like outpost on the
Yeah,
rough kind of planet.
it's not Mos Eisley honest.
Yeah.
Like complete with cantina and cantina band, and there's even an alien that looks suspiciously like one of the dancers from the cantina as well.
This film was made in 1989, I think.
Mm,
And again, spoilers here. It is about Cyborg, Spock's mysterious undiscovered half brother.
yeah, from a previous marriage,
and a full blooded Vulcan.
a full-blooded Vulcan, but one who has embraced emotion. Yeah. And with that, obviously at the time, like thinking how old he must be, because he has to be significantly older than Spock, realistically.
Vulcans live a long time, though.
Yeah. So at that point, he would have still been quite a revolutionary, because obviously Enterprise was made after all of this. But in Enterprise, one of the main story threads is of Vulcans changing some of their traditions and what have you because of I suppose, a new prophet. And he's the person that actually brings back the mind meld, which was an ancient technique that at the time of Enterprise had been shunned by Vulcans. But obviously, by the time we get to the original series, mind melds were more common practice. So he was potentially part of the afterwave, like the ripple effect of that distortion in Vulcan culture. So as much as this film is, again, I think it's got some excellent ideas. It just and even some fantastic moments and scenes, but it just doesn't quite work together. Unfortunately,
I think
there's not a balance.
Cyborg is not a villain.
He isn't. No,
He's not even a bad person, right?
Mm,
He wants to meet God
mm,
and thinks he's found him
mm.
and needs a starship to get there.
Yeah,
Well, he makes a very valid point of not shedding, of trying not to shed blood.
mm,
And upon realizing his mistake, he does try and save everyone.
yeah, yeah. It's a like, yeah. He sacrifices himself at the end. He becomes one with the godlike creature, which of course is harking back to traditional Star Trek. They in the original series they met dozens of godlike beings. Some of them literally the gods of our ancient religions, like the Greek and the Roman myths. Um, they met the gods that inspired that. And in some
Probably even going
cases,
to have a bit of discussion of godlike beings in Disco Corner later.
we certainly are. I mean, obviously, in the original series, there's even potentially a proto Q, like a young Q. It's still not been confirmed, but I mean, you go back and you watch that episode, it does seem very Q, like the playful nature of the character.
Q or AQ, would you say?
AQ. I don't think it's Q from yeah. I think it's AQ. So, but yeah, it's. I think the one thing I noticed the most, and we've spoken about this off camera, especially when I then went and watched Undiscovered Country, is that when the film starts, it's actually all set around a trio of a Klingon, a Romulan, and a human representing the Federation.
Sidebar, actually, for a second.
Go on. Yeah, sure.
The only time I think I would call people from Earth being called Terrans in Prime Universe Star Trek.
No, I'm sure I've
heard it before.
I'm sure I've heard it before. But I mean, saying that, at that point, it could be seen as an insult. Because obviously, like,
it seems to be being used in a very matter of fact, this is what people from Earth are called manner.
So, I mean, it could be. I mean, the reason that Terran is used anyway is because it is a term for humanity, isn't it? But the so you've got the human, the Romulan, and the Klingon, because at that point, there is an attempt between the three cultures at a form of peace.
Yeah.
And so the planet that they're on, it's not Mos Eisley Honest, is meant to be the planet of peace. So where the three of them are working together to try and create this new society, and it isn't quite working. But you also get the feeling that the three that were chosen were not necessarily the best representations of their particular cultures either. They were probably the ones that had been in the bad books but weren't necessarily bad enough to fire, or in the case of Klingons, kill. So as punishment, almost, they were sent to this planet. But there was an interesting idea in that actually Undiscovered Country almost rehashes and then makes the focus of Undiscovered Country, the politics of it, the idea of these two factions, these two like great rivals, finally ending the war. And of course, it was. Did you say it was 89?
89, yeah.
which of course was the year that the Soviet Union fell. So
And also the year that everyone's favourite Bear in Mind host was born.
I was born in 82, but yeah, good try. So of course, like Star Trek being Star Trek, all their stories do reference our real world. So this film was sort of timed to, because they, at the point that this film would have been made, which would have been 88, it was very obvious that the Soviet Union was on its way down. So of course this was trying to show the peace of the East and the West finally happening.
I said at the start, a couple of things that stood out to me is how weird the film is. Not just that it's a bad film, but that it's just very weird. Like, so much of it is just odd. And not it I've said before that I love films that go for it and fail miserably. And this is
Yeah.
almost there.
Again, I forget whether you said it in once we started filming or beforehand, but like I think I'd be interested to see what the hell was in the script that was turned down.
Yeah.
Where it was too Kirk-centric. Like how far did Shatner want to go with this? So like that might be the film that you're looking for if it goes for it and fails.
Yeah. So there's a book out there called The Autobiography of James T. Kirk. It's a Star Trek novels aren't officially canon.
They're in that sort of limbo space where if they're deemed
the
good
Star
enough,
Trek franchise is not like the Star Wars franchise where extra media is considered part
canon.
of it.
Yeah. But they might choose to bring something in at some point if it like, because if it's a good idea, it's a good idea.
And I've not read the others because they've done ones for Picard and Janeway so far as well.
Oh,
and
cool.
I think Spock.
Yeah.
But the Kirk one completely writes this film out of the story.
Yes. Yeah.
I can't remember exactly, and the book's great. I don't like this part because as much as this is not a good film, I think it is part of the canon. But they have a scene where they go to a planet that they'd visited previously, and they find people have made a film about the Enterprise crew. And that film is Final Frontier.
Yeah, you see, I know why you don't like it, but at the same time, again, with the odd cinematic choice that cinematography choice that we discussed before.
You can see how you could.
I could see that this might be potentially both a film within a film franchise and also based on the truth. Because this could very well have been an adventure of the Enterprise that there was then told as a story within the Star Trek universe.
Does bring me to one of my second points about this film. It feels cheap.
Yeah.
It very much feels like it was made on a shoestring budget of sorts. Not a shoestring budget. I don't know what its budget was, but compared to what we've seen so far,
you
definitely didn't have as much money.
You'd be able to look it up. I think yes, to an extent, I agree with you, but I think some of it's just misspent because there are some bits that actually look really, really nicely made.
Noticed a few more reused effect shots.
Yeah.
This film franchise reuses a lot of the model work, I think.
But yeah, there's some really beautiful, like some of the internals, as we said, the sweeping opening, well, not opening shot, but where Kirk first comes onto the Enterprise. The sets there are actually wonderful. They're really nicely made, and there's obviously there's some on location stuff like shooting it.
It's worth noting though, a lot of these sets would have been pre-built. They would have already had them for previous.
Even so, it's like, I mean, here we go. I found a list.
The set of Not Mos Eisley is a very nice set.
This might surprise you.
Okay.
Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, at the point of being made, was the most expensive Star Trek film, except for the motion picture, and significantly more expensive than 2, 3, and 4. So, motion picture had a budget of $35 million.
Yeah.
Which at the time was massive. Bearing in mind that Star Wars in 77, this one came out in 79, Star Wars had a budget of $20 million, which at the time was seen as quite large, like very, very large. Wrath of Khan, 12 million. Search for Spock, 18 million. Voyage Home, 24 million. And then this at $30 million. And then Undiscovered Country went back down to 27. And it's only...
saying is William Shatner is not a great economist.
Quite possibly, yeah. I mean, and none of the Picard movies went above 70 million. And that was with all of the brand new CGI stuff, because from First Contact onwards, that was when they started using CGI instead of model work. Obviously, it had a slightly bigger budgets and stuff like that. Like, they were trying to make big money out of things. Yeah, so it's in fact, it's in Insurrection until the Kelvin universe. It's the most expensive Star Trek film ever made.
So the cast are starting to feel older here, I think.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
And one thing I did like in this film as well was the little burgeoning romance between Scotty and Uhura.
Yes, yeah, because again, I've rewatched the original series recently, and in obviously in the Kelvin universe, they've set it up that Uhura and Spock have a romance, and I did think to myself, well, all right, that's novel, but where did it come from? And it is actually in the original series. Spock never gets into it, but Uhura is all over him in the first season. Like, she wants some Vulcan bad in that first season. So, like, it's quite nice to see that actually in their old age, like, she has found some love, and so is Scotty. And
it's actually two of their scenes that are seared into my memory from this film. Point that all through this rewatch, I've been thinking, like, which film is this in? And expecting it.
Yeah.
And then it's not. It's in Final Frontier. It's Scotty going, I know this ship like the back of my hand.
Yeah.
And walks into the...
yeah.
And Uhura's desert dance.
Yeah.
Both those scenes seared into my mind.
You see that, again, as random as it felt like, having rewatched the original series, she can't stop singing.
Oh, she does sing a lot in the original series. Yeah.
Season 1, again, in particular, she's
quite often like the scenes where Spock's playing the.
Yeah, every episode she's in, she sings pretty much. She doesn't stop. So this is very much as weird as it felt at this point in the story. It's very true to the character. So like Shatner may have done some strange things and probably made it very Kirk-centric, but at the same time, he's also done justice to some of the characters around him, and ones that not necessarily have actually had that much to do. Like, I mean, Uhura realistically, in the films up until this point, has not really had a lot to do.
One thing,
She's been there just because she was
she
in.
has a bit in Voyage Home, but she has been under you. This film probably utilizes her the most.
Yeah, I think this is her film in a way, in that like all of the others, there's like a little bit like obviously it's all about Kirk and Spock, and then Bones gets his moments, and then Scotty gets his moments, and Chekhov and Sulu get their moments. But Uhura very much has been missing from that. So I think that one of the nice things actually, again, it's a bit random, but one of the nice things about this film is actually that Uhura gets to stretch her legs a little bit. So.
One thing that does drop off in this film, the costuming.
Yeah.
Like it just isn't as full of as iconic looks as the previous films.
Yeah, although again, it feels very much like it's. I don't think it's set significantly long. Like I remember, and this is really nerdy. I checked Memory Bank Alpha, I think, and this isn't set significantly longer after the end of Voyage Home.
I would say it's set directly after Voyage Home.
I think it's like a month,
Yeah,
maybe.
because I
Like,
get the feeling that they're on shore leave while the Enterprise gets finished.
yeah, so they're all like they're a bit worn out.
Yeah,
I mean, they've just time traveled and saved the world. So like they're a bit worn out. They're getting old. They're wearing uniforms that like probably past their prime at this point as well. So it's yeah. I mean, you're right. Maybe costume just wasn't something that he prioritized.
but for the most part, they're all just wearing big jumpers.
Mm. So yeah, strange one. But then, I mean, I think this was the first film he directed, not just the first
Yeah,
Star Trek film. I mean, he'd probably done a lot of like a fair amount of TV at this point, but yeah, I think this was the first film he directed as well, or at least big one. And I mean, again, at the time, $30 million was not short change. It was really only in the late '90s that things started to really ramp up as far as budgets went. So $30 million in 1988-89, that's still probably the equivalent of 100 plus now. So
I don't think I've got much else to say on this film.
no, I don't. So we'll take it to the cold light of day.
Yeah, well,
And
I've
where
recently started reviewing films on Letterboxd again. If anyone wants to follow me on there, and by review, I'm not writing reviews. I'm just listing what I watch and scoring them. But if anyone wants to follow me on there, I'll list my doodads in the box below. Yeah,
in the comment section.
what
Yeah,
people do.
yeah.
And I gave this 2 stars.
Hmm. Yeah. I wasn't going to go that low.
Okay.
I can't because I've been reviewing them while I was watching them, which I think when I watched this one it was maybe a month or 6 weeks ago now. And I can't remember what I gave it then, but I have a feeling I gave it over 3 because I think there were certain ideas that I thought were nice ideas, but not necessarily well executed. But I think I'm going to go under 3. I think you've convinced me. I know you don't. I know you don't like decimal points. I know you're very American that way. You'd much prefer solid numbers or fractions. So I'm going to go with 2.5.
2.5. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's fair.
I think yeah, lots of good ideas. There are some great scenes. There is. I don't think there are many bad scenes. I just don't think it actually works as a film. I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
It doesn't flesh out enough of the whole Shakari idea. It doesn't necessarily flesh out the whole like Cybox cult idea enough. It does nothing quite gets everything that it needs, and I think that's why it slightly falls down. It's almost trying to spin too many plates, if anything.
Yeah.
Because there's actually quite a lot of nice little bits and pieces and ideas and stuff, and one of them is taken and, as we said, fleshed out and made better in the next film, Undiscovered Country.
At next week.
Yeah,
Star Trek
6, Undiscovered Country, which will be our Christmas Day episode.
Yeah.
So,
and you know what this leads us to?
Yeah.
Time for Disco Corner.
Yeah. Indeed. So
it's very hard to keep a Vulcan thingy while doing
like that. You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes too much of my brain to keep my hand in that position to also move my arm.
I don't know. I find it quite easy. Can you do this then? Can you like out a finger, in, middle?
I do not have that kind of control.
Fair enough.
Well then.
Yes. Disco
Corner. Episode 9.
Episode 9.
Terra
yes.
Firma Part 1.
Yeah. So this is
Part 1. Terra Firma, right?
It is. Yeah. It's Terra Firma Part 1. I watched it. I finished watching it about half an hour before we started filming this.
I watched it last night.
Yeah. It's So it's part 1 of what's probably 2.
Yeah. Although the first part 1 this season didn't get a part 2. It changed the title by the time we got to part 2.
Yeah. So yeah, it's probably of part 2. Of 2 parts. Sorry. I doubt they'll go to 3 episodes with this.
Looking at the episode list for the rest of this season, it's a 2-parter.
Yeah, season 13 is episode 13 is the last of the episodes. So it probably makes sense that episode 10 will finish this story, or this little part of this story, and then they've got 3 episodes to wrap the season up. So in this episode, it mainly focuses on Georgia and what is happening to her. We see David Cronenberg pop up again.
He's all like, just let her die. While Culver's like, no.
Yeah, he's like, computer, stroke, sphere data, stroke, sentient computer thing.
Solve this problem for me.
Solve this problem. Can we solve it? And Cronenberg's all like, no, Morty, no, we can't. And then the computer's like, yeah, mate, probably. Yeah, so they go to this random uninhabited planet. And speaking of Q,
first off, we've got some stuff before then.
Go on then. Go on.
There's a scene where they're discussing this information with the Admiral. And Saru's all, nah, we also just need to kind of let her die, sorry.
He's not that blunt. He's not that blunt.
I think this episode, Saru was a bit of a prick.
He's also being realistic. He knows full well that they are, in theory, the strongest ship in the fleet, despite being the oldest ship in the fleet. And therefore, if they're off on some jolly in a different part of the galaxy, trying to sort out Giorgio, while the villains of the piece are busy having some war games somewhere, then
but the Admiral, it's another one of those awkward moments where Michael kind of undercuts his authority again, but the Admiral agrees with her this time.
Sort of. I mean, she doesn't go out of her way for it.
No,
Like she at least
and I
respects
think it
respects the
only feels
authority.
that way because of what's come before.
Hmm.
But
And I think the thing is that though it was a nice tool to make the admiral seem a bit more sympathetic as well.
yes, and you
Because
get
at
that
the
nice moment between the admiral and Saru at the
yeah,
end.
because obviously so far the admiral has been a bit doubting of Discovery's crew, and the audience has been a bit doubting of the admiral and
But
the current
I
Starfleet.
think it's that moment where Discovery's hope is even starting to infect the admiral.
Yeah.
Like the admiral's fought of all the tough
Mm,
calls he's had to make through the years to keep whatever's left of a federation
yeah.
standing, and he's got a history of regret.
Mm.
And
And
he,
which, as he mentions, and he knows that what could seem as a small thing could be the beginning of a cascade, like the first
yeah,
domino that tips everything else. So
so yeah, we get some scenes of Giorgio acting up,
mhm.
throws a bowl of soup on Tilly.
After failing to pick up a glass of wine.
Yep.
Yeah.
But then you get a little nice moment when Michael. Oh, and she tries to get Michael to kill her.
Mm,
Then you get a nice moment where Michael and Georgia are beaming down to this mystery planet
mm,
where she has her moment with Saru, with Tilly before heading down,
mm.
and you see how they've infected her as well with their decency.
Yes. Yeah, there's a little hint of it.
Yeah,
And again, I mean, like this, there's a very nice setup in this, like with how blunt Saru was in the scene we've just discussed, and then how sensitive he was when saying potentially goodbye to
yeah,
Giorgio in that bit, which then leads to what happens later on in the episode. But in the meantime, yes, they beam down and they
and they meet the Doctor.
yes, they meet either Doctor Who.
He's not. Let's just
No,
clarify: it's
yeah,
not the
it's totally
not the
not Doctor
Doctor.
Who. But
Yeah,
then, as we've said in this series so far, they have very much managed to, I think, tick that box that modern Doctor Who has. Like
but it's
Discovery feels like the American answer to Doctor Who.
there is some
Um,
very fun IDW Doctor Who Star Trek comic crossovers out there
mm,
as well from when they had both licenses.
yeah,
But yeah, they meet an entity
yeah.
that feels like
But
it could be a Q.
could be a Q, could be one of the various godlike creatures that we discussed
Yeah,
when
but it
talking about. But
presents itself as a bowler hat wearing.
newspaper reading.
It's itself as a Brit, to be fair, or at least the feeling of it.
What
It felt typical, and maybe it is my brain inferring Doctor Who,
I
but
I got the feeling it was less of a Brit and more of like the early 20th century American gentleman.
yeah, yeah, I can see that.
Um, so because I mean, like when in Band of Brothers, the TV
Yeah,
series Band of Brothers, um, Spielberg deliberately cast um, British actors to play some of the officers because the wealthy northeastern Americans at the time would have had this strange mid-Atlantic accent,
yeah,
so a kind of British American hybrid. And so the casting was very much that, and I felt that this character was along those lines of
yeah.
a well-to-do northeastern American from like pre 1950, I suppose.
He shows up on this barren planet with a
Mm.
door.
Well, I mean, it wasn't barren. There was plenty of life, just no sentient life. There was lots of trees.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah. Um, But yeah, there's a random door, a bit like Monsters Inc., where there's just a door in the middle of nowhere.
And he tells Giorgio to go through it.
And it's full of riddles and cryptic things, which does make it you think potentially is a cue, because obviously they love riddles and playing with people. But yeah, there's mention in this episode for the first time of the Kelvin universe, actually referring to it directly, as opposed to, like, in a previous episode they talked about how Spock had disappeared, but they'd not actually directly referenced.
Episode we talk about someone who'd come to the Prime universe from the Kelvin universe in what looks like the TNG era, judging from the uniform.
Because he'd so Giorgio is suffering from from a degenerative
combination
condition
of, turns out, people don't like traveling through dimensions and don't like time travel.
Yeah,
combine the two.
You can do a certain amount of one or the other, but try not to do both.
Yeah,
and of course Giorgio's body has done a lot of both.
At least try not to do both without going back to where
you're meant to be. Yeah.
It's implied that your body fights to be
where it should be.
Yeah.
So a lot of the episode takes part in the Mirror universe, where it actually goes back in time a bit from the original series of Disco.
It didn't affect Spock in the Kelvin timeline, obviously because it wasn't a thing then in the writing, but
he was also incredibly old.
Yeah, but he was also where he wasn't out of time as such, just out of place.
He was out of time because he travelled back in time as well.
He did, but his genes, not his genes, like there's still a Spock at the point in time he's at.
Yeah, I suppose.
So it might be that and obviously it didn't affect him because this wasn't a thing. But
it was. I mean, obviously it wasn't a thing. But even if it was retroactively added, like, I think the space between the three films, like the first film and the third film, because he dies before the third film starts. I think
in between films.
I mean, it's maybe a maximum of 5 years, isn't it? So, like, chances are potentially it was this phenomenon that killed the old man off. But I mean, he was such an old man at that point anyway that, like, it was probably his time anyway. But yeah, so she jumps back to before the assassination attempts happen. When
we met her in the
where her Michael is still alive. Lorca is still in her universe. So it's her almost doing a kind of It's a Wonderful Life kind of job, or a Scrooge or something like that, of like thinking
time's already shifting over there, right? Wasn't there a Mirror Stamets when they went back in season 1?
Yes.
And she's just killed him.
She has. But who's to say that wasn't Mirror Stamets dead? But in the mycelial network.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
So she hasn't necessarily changed it completely, but maybe twisted it a little bit. That's assuming this is actually in her universe, and it isn't just all completely in her mind, or in the a fiction created by whatever that Q-like being is.
True.
Yeah. So
I wonder if she's going to be faced with the.
I mean, we are coming up to Christmas, so this could be an Star Trek's very sly Christmas special of It's a Wonderful Life Scrooge kind of thing, where this bitter, angry killer realizes her humanity, and it's when embracing her humanity rather than her Terran side that
Well,
she
it's
can.
even to the Terrans, what is weakness, she is showing, isn't she? Like
Yes,
she is a softer Giorgio than the one who left the mirror
yes,
universe.
but potentially one that realizes that actually in like having a balance of the aggression that she had and a wisdom and compassion that she now has is the way to go. Because obviously, in a time of war, you still need her ruthless aggression, but at the same time, you need that certain wisdom.
I wonder if the question we're going to face her with is going back and ruling over the mirror universe and having everything she thinks she wanted, but it
Yeah.
damns Discovery and Prime Michael.
Mm,
Like for all her complaints that Michael isn't her Michael,
mm.
that she realized she potentially has way more affection for the
I mean, the
Prime
thing is,
Michael than for Mirror Michael.
the other thing is that in the mirror universe, in the Terran universe, she knows full well that her time is limited. At some point, someone will assassinate her.
Yeah.
Like it's guaranteed. It might not be Michael. It might not be Lorca. It might not be Tilly. It could be like anyone. Someone is going to kill her. Whereas in the Prime universe, and there was a nice little reference in there as well. She before she left, she said, "In my universe, we are the Prime, and you're the Mirror."
Yeah.
But whereas in the Prime universe, she's got a life
Yeah.
and one that she can live. And she said
And
that
family and
growth is
friends,
a
right?
sign of strength. Hmm?
Family and friends.
Family, friends, and as she said to her Michael in this episode, that like growth is a sign of strength as well.
Yeah.
So
I will say
maybe
the rest of the cast obviously get to have a lot of fun being
being
evil
their
in
other
this
other
episode.
selves, yeah. Except for Saru,
Yeah.
yeah,
Who actually gets to be a less dominant version of
yeah,
himself.
because he's gone back to the enslaved versions of the Kelpians, where the Vahari is the end of their life, but instead of it being the other aliens that live on the Kelpian homeworld that cull them at the time of the Vahari, it's the Terrans that cull them at the time of the Vahari and turn them into soup. But of course, Giorgio reveals that she knows what this is about, and etc., and has a bond with Mirror Universe Saru. I do wonder if they're going to set it up that she allows him to go through the Vahari, and then he goes absolutely fucking nuts and becomes the Emperor.
Could be interesting.
Because that could really shake stuff up. But then again, how does that lead to?
As you say, that is if any of this stuff is real in the
Yeah.
first place. It all could be in Giorgio's head, or as say a creation of that entity. I said to you before we started recording that it does feel like a slightly weird side trip to be taken.
It does, although I think that like the reveal of the ship that potentially caused the burn being a Kelpian ship or a Kelpian crewed Starfleet ship, and the fact that obviously Giorgio is focusing on the plight of the Kelpians in the Mirror Universe as well.
Yeah, it could all tie
together. I mean, we discussed before shooting this that maybe with them actually acknowledging the Kelvin universe as well. Maybe the Kelvin universe is the reason that, as they've discussed in the series, that the Prime universe and the Mirror universe are pulling apart. Perhaps the Kelvin universe is acting as as a wedge,
Yeah.
and it's disturbing the balance of the of time and space.
One thing,
So we shall see.
just bear with me a second.
Of course. I mean, the thing is that with the Kelvin universe, none of those actors are expensive enough that they couldn't get them in for Discovery season 4 if that was what Discovery season 4 was. That they had to destroy the Kelvin universe.
Chris Pine, maybe.
I don't think even he's that expensive anymore. I don't think he's quite hit the height of what people were expecting him.
I kind of hope, on a slight side note, I kind of hope Patty Jenkins casts him in Rogue One for something.
In Rogue One?
Yeah, not Rogue One. Sorry, Rogue Squadron.
I slightly went off her the other day because she was saying, she said there was a quote of her.
The Warner Party line.
Yeah, it's the like, oh, the Schneider cut, blah 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 blah. It's like
she is very much towing her company line at the moment.
Oh yeah, she, like, you know, and any idea of her being an independent-minded director and what have you is gone out the window. She's very much the Warner shill that the others are at the moment. So,
which weirdly,
yeah,
it's so weird. We're living in a universe where Nolan, of all people, is not a Warner shill.
Yeah, I mean, massive side tangent here for Star Trek fans. But yeah, I mean, him saying that.
I just like to say,
yeah,
shill is probably not a word we should be using. I think I've always said.
I know it's one of those horrible.
Yeah, I don't
horrible
want to
side
be
of the
one
internet.
those YouTube channels.
No. Although I do hate the concept of the Snyder Cut.
But let's not focus on that. And
no.
And
we'll do that when we inevitably watch
review it.
Yeah, I mean, we might have to. It might have to be a drunk review for that one just to get through it.
Because Star Trek, which is all about positivity and hope.
But yeah,
I say is Sunita Martin Green. She's such a good eye actress.
Yep.
Like the stuff she does with her eyes in the Mirror universe to kind of
differentiate herself.
Wild rage.
It's gonna sound daft. I wasn't necessarily thinking about the eyes. I was thinking about the mouth. Her mouth acting in this, like the way that she was enunciating things and using all of her mouth, and the fact that she was wearing that really thick black lipstick as well. Like she knew what the makeup was doing for it. I think sometimes she doesn't do herself many favors when she's playing Prime Universe Michael. Like there's far too much whispering and things like that sometimes, and it's a bit too soft. And it's a bit like
both characters are very hard, but Prime Michael is all about very kind of hard, angry compassion.
Yeah.
While you don't have a compassion in Mirror Michael.
Yeah, Prime Michael is like a mother that's struggling to get her kid to eat broccoli. And so she's angry, but it's like, you better eat that broccoli, but you can have some ice cream afterwards. So
she has got this the Federation is all about kicking compassion into people.
Yeah, you will love it. So, but yeah, it's. I think for her in particular, actually, this is an episode where she really got to stretch her legs, and I hope that I know she, for the most part, is the focus of Discovery. But I think there's something about the direction of Prime Universe Michael that I think needs changing up, and I think actually season 3 has sort of started that a bit. And
I was also quite fond of the Glee in Killy.
Yeah.
whenever she gets to potentially kill someone.
Yeah.
And the doctor,
Nice little.
during like all the shots that went over to the doctor during the opera.
Mm.
Again, there was just some like, I'm the evil version of me.
But it's quite. It was nicely done. I think that's the
Enjoy it.
as because I mean he had no speaking part
No,
in that as the mirror version of himself anyway. So of course anything that he had to do was a purely physical thing. I mean, it didn't come across like it could have come across as really campy pantomime level villain, and it was just shy of that to the point that it worked because you only ever got like
thing
little
is,
snapshots of him.
I do think the Mirror Universe is campy pantomime villain, but I'm not saying that in a negative manner in the
No,
same way that I think you implied there. Like it,
no, I mean,
it's scenery
I
chewing evil.
it is scenery chewing evil, but in the John Sim playing the doctor, playing the master kind of way.
Yeah,
John
which was,
Sim's master was masterful, no pun intended,
and
or pun
also very
intended, sorry,
pantomime.
and also very pantomime. And the current master, God, what's his name?
Yeah, he's so good.
Yeah, because he very obviously is playing the next incarnation after John Sim, and so like he's got because he's the one before Missy, isn't he?
You think?
Uh, I think so. Yeah. Um, so he's doing an excellent version of John Sim, really, in a new skin. And yeah, I think that like when Mirror Universe is done well, and a lot of this was done very well, you get that same like John Sim as the master kind of campy villain, but where they're still like, oh yeah, they're terrifying, but also incredibly entertaining.
It serves the extremeness of their evil,
Mm,
serves to highlight how Jojo is not that
mm,
person anymore.
anymore. Yeah.
That the Prime Universe has infected her with notions of kindness and compassion, and
Mm. And as you said, growth.
yeah,
Actually understanding things might make things that little bit easier. Like the horror in her face when she was discussing the quality of art on that particular planet. And then
yeah,
Michael turned around and said, yes, it's incredible. That's why I blinded the artists and removed their hands so that the value of the art would go up. And the you could see it in like again brilliant like non-verbal acting, like brilliant facial acting there. That Michelle Yao or Yo, however you pronounce it, just you could see it in the expression that she was thinking, "Oh no, that's a death of a culture. That
yeah.
isn't just the maiming of a person. That is a death of a culture." Um, and that's yeah. I mean, it might have felt like a slightly oddly placed episode, but actually, as with everything that they've done, it was excellently executed.
Yeah,
I mean, it is consistently as good as Star Trek can get, I think.
I'm enjoying it still. Yes,
Yeah, I mean it's a very, very, very high quality Star Trek at the moment. Um, and it again, as we discussed earlier in the season, I think that like it is a new Star Trek. It isn't what old Star Trek was, but it is most certainly Star Trek, and it is
yeah,
doing it very, very well. I think whoever is show running Picard season 2 is going it has something to live up to. Like it is going to be a challenge.
I think
Um,
one thing we should do at some point as well as a
mm,
one-off episode
mm.
is if we all watch, if me and you watch Lower Decks, and we'll do an episode on the entire series. I think
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
that could be
because I'm
quite
yet to
cool to
see
do.
that. I need to see all of the short treks as well because I've only seen the first season of them
Yeah,
that are on UK Netflix.
Maybe we could do a Lower Decks and Short Treks episode.
I think so.
The Short Treks are all on Blu-ray over here as well.
Nice. May have to pick them up. On that note, I think that might be it for this episode. So, we're recording this on Saturday the 12th. So it's of December 2020. It's going out. It's going out on Friday the 18th, which is the release date of episode 10. So part 2 of this story of Discovery. And then we will be filming our final episode, at least talking about the Kirk films, which will go out on Christmas Day. And then I think we'll see the rest of the season out with some Disco Corner for the rest of the season. But we do have some new things coming our way, or the return of some of an old season coming our way in the new year. January 1st being the first episode of that. So where we jump from Star Trek to Star Wars.
For our Star Wars a double bill special.
But more on that later. So thanks for watching.
See you around.
Live long and prosper. Kabbalah, James.